You need to change the education. They're raised that the Jew stole your land. You cannot live until the Jew is dead. So that has to change. If that doesn't change, they will never stop blowing themselves up. So it's really education. And UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which perpetuates the refugee status of every Palestinian and their descendant, is a major, if not the major reason that an entire generation of Palestinians in Gaza is now suffering terribly because they were raised that they are the ultimate victim and the Jew has taken everything from them and they have no life until the Jew is gone. So changing that education, God willing, will make change.
This week on Jew and Stew, we're joined by Shoshanna Keats Jaskoll. She's an author, philanthropist, podcaster, and a fearless voice behind Warrior with a Pen. She is one of TLV's top 100 Jews and recognized by the Times of Israel, Jerusalem Post, and Hadassah. Shoshanna is one of the leading advocates amplifying women voices in the Orthodox community and challenging religious extremism. She's a thinker, a doer, a true warrior for representing Zionism, and today she brings that fire to Jew and Stew. Thanks for joining us. Have a listen.
Hi, Shoshanna. Thank you so much for joining us on Jew and Stew today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am personally thrilled to have you on here. It's a little bit different from what we normally do. I mean, we always showcase activists. A lot of the ones we've had on the podcast before have been activists kind of advocating outside the Jewish community, but you do a lot of advocating within the actual Jewish community. And I find that really fascinating, especially since that activism is for women. But I want to start a little bit about your childhood and how you grew up. I know you were born in the States and you are no longer living in the States. So take us to your childhood and your Judaism.
Goodness. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here. Usually I'm the one interviewing people on my podcast. So it's
well,
nice
you can tell us how we do.
The other side of the microphone. Yeah, no problem. I will say we were one of the original Orthodox, certainly, I think the first female Orthodox podcast, which was really cool. We just finished our 8th season.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Yeah. That's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
Why don't you plug the name right now? Where can we hear it?
The podcast is called Chochmat Nashim, which is the name of my organization as well, which we named it in Israel, and we did not really think through how's that going to be abroad. So it gets chopped up into many pieces, as I'm sure you can imagine, but it loosely translates to women's wisdom. And it's from a pasuk, from a sentence in a verse. It's from a verse in the Bible, which is Chochmat Nashim Banta Beita, which means women's wisdom builds her home. And we always wanted to say, Chochmat Nashim Banta Kehila, which is the women's wisdom builds a community, because together, this is how we build community, and we're all about a healthy community. But I will go back to my childhood for a moment before I had a podcast. I was born and raised in Lakewood, New Jersey, before it was Brooklyn. That's how I say it for people who've been to Lakewood in the past 20 years. It's very, very different. I grew up in a Lakewood that was beautiful and had not only the lake, but lots of woods all around. It's what's called Lakewood. And people used to summer there, really. They would go on vacation there to get out of the city. And it was a very varied community, Reform, conservative, Orthodox, but it still had the yeshiva. The yeshiva is decades old, and it may even be at this point 100 years old. It's called Beit Midrash Gvoha, which means high or I don't remember my English anymore, guys. I'm really sorry, but basically, it's a Beit Midrash, a school of study for Torah, and there's thousands, I think, of students there now. And it's the largest yeshiva outside of Israel, which has been for a long time. Yeah, it's been for a long time. But when I was there, it was a more modest and integrated. So you had modern Orthodox, you had Reform, you had conservative, and it didn't really matter what you wore on your head or on your toches. Yeah, so you just said good Shabbos to each other when you walked past one another. You knew you were a Jew and you said good Shabbos, and it didn't matter. And I grew up in a community like that, right? So while I did go to the modern Orthodox day school, my parents were not religious. So I kind of was comfortable with everybody
Why did they choose to send you to Orthodox day school if they themselves were not religious?
Well, there's no they. My mother insisted. My father hated it. Long story short, and it's a long story, my mother's parents were Holocaust survivors. They were each married twice before they married one another, and they both lost children, like had children murdered in front of their eyes in Poland. They did not know each other until they were, oh gosh, I think they were in their 50s at least, if not more.
I need to back up to that. Your grandparents watched their children murdered in front of them.
Yeah.
Your mom's siblings.
Mm-hmm. My mother has always lit yahrzeit candles for siblings that she never knew.
I don't think that's that uncommon for Holocaust survivors. When we excavated my grandpa's story, who was what I was saying before, Shoshanna was part of the Belsky Brigade. When we translated his diary, we found out he was actually married before, and the Germans killed his first wife and child. So that also speaks to the resilience of our ancestors, where they still found Jewish joy even after all of that. So that's just something so sobering my family dealt with that I can relate. Shoshanna, it's crazy and multi-generational trauma packaged.
Yeah. And we each carry our trauma differently. I'm now just settled into the idea that I have this 3G trauma. For me, it comes out in I need to know where or when the next meal is. I don't need to be hungry. I may not eat it, but I need to know that it exists. Otherwise, I feel an anxiety, and I'm not an anxious person. I got a lot of flaws, but anxiety is not an issue that I have generally, except when I don't know where the next meal is coming. So my husband and I went away once for, I don't know, my birthday anniversary, and we were going to a place that didn't have kosher food. And I'm like, do you think we should just bring something for dinner? He's like, well, we'll find something on the way. I'm like, but do you think that we should just in case we don't find something, do you think we should just bring something? He's like, we'll find something on the way. Needless to say, we did not find something on the way. And I was unhappy and frustrated. I don't even know if I was hungry, but it was an emotional difficulty with me that I did not know when and where there would be food. And it's not like my grandmother gave this over to me in a overt way, but right. I think that's where it comes from.
Did they talk about it?
About
after the war? Yeah, after the war, were your grandparents, were you aware of this as a young child? I mean, I remember being young and my mother was reading a Holocaust book a day. So that's her neuroses. She just needed to relive it. Did your grandparents talk about it?
So it's not that my grandparents spoke about it as much as they cried about it. My grandmother would sit at the table with a glass of hot water or tea and a lump of sugar. Well, actually, I should rephrase that. And a lump of sugar in her mouth. And she would drink the tea and suck on the sugar. And she would just be crying. And she was just, I grew up with that was normal, sitting at the table crying. And my grandfather, even though, and we'll go back to the whole religious thing, but my grandfather was raised religious. He went to yeshiva, but he was not religious when I knew him. The house was kosher and we did Pesach and all that, but Shabbat, the TV was on, let's say. And my grandfather could not get through Kiddush without breaking down crying. It was not a thing it just was. It was part of my environment. That's just, the Holocaust was in my blood before I was walking. My consciousness, I should say, not just my blood. But so my grandparents were religious in Poland, like most Jews were.
Shoshanna, tell us about your Jewry, how it started. What was your grandparents' affiliation with their religious identity after the war?
So when they lived in Poland, they were religious. But after Poland, and they were not married at this point. My mother's mother lost her first husband was murdered by the Nazis. And then she found her second husband, who was actually my biological grandfather, in a DP camp. Okay, so they met. My grandmother became a partisan. And then she met my biological grandfather in a DP camp in Germany. They moved to Bolivia after having a son together. My mother was born in Bolivia. They were sponsored to come to New York. And unfortunately, then he got Hodgkin's disease and died. And my mother was 2.5 years old. So it's the classic story of a man needs a wife and a woman needs a husband. So my grandmother and grandfather, the one that I knew growing up, and who raised my mother for all intents and purposes, they got married. There was each the third marriage. And now, so I actually have full, half, and step aunts, uncles, and cousins. But for me growing up, there was no difference. We were all family. Like there was no, like, I just thought this was like, okay, this is what it is. But I realize now that it's very interesting.
I think it's such a joy and privilege for survivors to now have these big families. Like that's winning, having these big harmonious families together.
So I have this picture. Someone recently made this for me. Ilan Blach, he's on Twitter. He's a great artist. He took a picture of my grandmother that I had, and he put behind her, I'll send it to you guys, put behind her a bridge blowing up, because that's what her partisan group was doing, blowing up bridges. And my mother wants me to print it for her. It is such a privilege and an honor to be descended from someone like that. And at the same time, it's tragic that what is my grandmother known for saying? Az mimuz muzme, which means if you must, you must. Like, because she would be asked, how did you do it? How did you? And she's like, well, when you have to do something, you just do it. There's no how. And I feel like, now that I'm older, I can say that has infused subconsciously, that's infused my work, because it's not even like well, do you think you can do this? No, it's got to be done. Like this has to be done. And it's not even like, I don't understand the question.
That's so much our ethos, I think. First of all, I don't really meet other people who are grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, let alone partisans fighters. So that's like a whole nother generational. For me, there was an ancestral calling. I think that was the catalyst to get involved here. Like, I really do believe that it was like somehow in my DNA to like throw away the rules and, like you're saying, make sure we get from A to B, no Jewish hate in our city or whatever, fighting against would be. Was that must have infused into your DNA and been the catalyst for what you're working on for the Jewish people, right?
So
or no?
I will say this to you. So my grandparents were not actively religious, but they were very knowledgeable, right? So Shabbat, we knew what Shabbat was. We knew what lighting candles were, whatever. But my grandmother was so traumatized from life and the Holocaust that she never even taught my mom the bracha, the blessing, over the candles or over an apple, nothing, not even modani. So my mom is a fluent Yiddish speaker. Like that's her first language is Yiddish, but she doesn't know an aleph from a beis because my grandmother particularly was so traumatized that she couldn't even bring it out. So my mother's brother went to yeshiva, got a full yeshiva education and was religious, Orthodox, but my mom didn't know anything. And so my mom determined when she married my father, who was from a completely secular, culturally Jewish, very proud to be Jewish, but they hated religion. She said to my father, I'll only marry you on two conditions. One, my kids, any future kids that we have will go to an Orthodox school. Or a Jewish school, she said. They will know what Shabbat is. They will know how to pray. They don't have to choose it, but they have to know it because she didn't want us to be ignorant like she was. And the house has to be kosher so that all of her religious family, her brother's family, could come to the house. So we had a kosher home, but we were eating McDonald's out.
You know what else I want to ask you? You're from where exactly? You're from New Jersey. Where in New Jersey?
Lakewood.
Is it very? So I have the North Shore is where me and Simona are from. Are you familiar with it in Chicago?
No,
not at all.
Northeastern snob. Sorry.
Got it. But it's the same thing. Like we literally have something called the North Shore where all the Jews kind of migrated to. All the baby. Yeah.
Well, they ended up there specifically in the town where my parents live, Highland Park, because it was one of the first suburbs to allow Jews and Blacks to live there, where the suburbs around did not allow them. So,
well, that answers my question then. I was going to ask, what is with these like homogeneous pockets of Jews that like, but we went where we were able to go.
Well, it's funny you say that because in Lakewood, New Jersey, when I grew up, it was 80% minority. I went to the public school for a couple of years, long story, and it was 80% minority. Like I had Black, Puerto Rican, Mexican friends, there were more minorities than there were white people. Easy.
Okay. So, but now is it just very Jewish? Yeah. It's like, interesting.
Because them took over.
I think the difference, though, Danny, is like I wouldn't say the North Shore is very Orthodox. Like it's a lot more secular, reformed, not as Orthodox as what Shoshanna's experience was.
Yeah, but I think it's the same. Like there's reformed. It's the area, and then it bleeds into like Skokie over here, and into some like West Rogers Park where they are from. So it just seems similar to me. I don't know. I don't really know the East Coast too well besides New York City. So I'm speaking
New
in no
York City
experience.
Or Newark? You said New York.
York. No, I don't know Newark.
Different places. So you grew up in this, sounds like, except for you said you went to a couple of years of public school. So you kind of broke out of this, we call it the Jewish bubble, right?
Yeah.
This insulated Jewish bubble. And you grew up there, and then what happened?
Let's see. So my mother was a Holocaust educator. I mean, she was a teacher. She was a vice principal, but she always taught Holocaust and taught adults the Holocaust. And she would go with groups to Poland to actually witness, to bear witness and to go to the camps and whatever. So when March of the Living started, my mom said to me, I want you to go. And I'm like, I do not want to go. I don't want to go to Poland. Like, why am I returning to the scene of misery for my family? Like, no, thank you. She's like, you really should go. You have to see what happened. I go, I know enough. Like, I don't need to go. And my mom was like, you're going. So I was like, okay. I think I was 17 or 18 years old. My sister came with me. She's a year and a half younger than me. And it was in a destroyed Jewish cemetery in Poland, meaning it was an older Jewish cemetery, and it was vandalized terribly, knocked over and broken tombstones and graffiti. I'm standing there and I'm like, even when we're dead, they don't leave us alone. I'm like, I don't want to raise my family under by the grace of people who are not Jewish. And so I came, then we did the 5 days in Israel, which totally sealed the deal. I mean, they do a really good job. They take you to like the worst of the worst and then bring you to Israel like Independence Day with all the hot soldiers. And you're just like, oh yes, this is what I'm doing.
Are you talking about where they show you how like the band played on the ceiling and like it's just a polished experience? I walked away like transformed, super Zionist.
There's no uniform quite like that IDF. I remember going on Birthright and seeing the IDF soldiers in their uniform the first time, and they're all like muscular and dark and tan, and those uniforms are great. Like, I don't think people realize how good they look in that uniform.
Well, so I came back from the March of the Living, and I said to my mom, I'm like, I'm making Aliyah. And she's like, you're finishing college first. And I was like, all right. So I finished with a degree in environmental studies. And then I enrolled in a master's program in Hebrew University. And the first course in the master's at Hebrew University that I was taking was a marine biology course in its Eilat campus. So Eilat, for anyone who does not know, is a southern Israeli city. It's on the Red Sea. It's absolutely breathtaking. And that's where I met a guy from New Jersey and I got married to him. So
you had to go to Israel to meet a guy from where you're from.
And I'm just like, I'm literally like, stay away from me. Like, I'm not going back to New Jersey. Like, go away. I'm marrying an Israeli. I'm going to be barefoot on a moshav. I'm not going to speak any English. Like, not happening, dude. Anyway, he didn't give up. And we wound up getting married a year later. And then, so that was my first Aliyah was single. And then the second time I made Aliyah was because I told him, I was like,
so you went back with him?
Well, I stayed in Israel and he didn't give up. And he really didn't give up. And this was before WhatsApp. And this was before free phone calls. Okay. So you're talking about hundreds of dollars of phone bills. Yeah. And airmail letters. I was just going
to ask if there was letter writing. Like, it's so romantic. The handwritten mailed letters. I love that.
I still have them. And then, so whatever. You guys, it's going to take forever if I tell you my whole story. So basically, we got married a year later and made Aliyah together. And we lived in Israel for 2.5 years, Jerusalem together. We had a baby, and then I never finished my master's. Don't tell all the feminists. And we moved back to New Jersey for 6 years because we were literally alone. Like, we had no family. And
hard to raise kids without that family
hard
support.
to raise kids without a village. 18 years ago, we moved back here. And that is where it all started, because I moved to a lovely town called Beit Shemesh. Have you ever heard of Beit Shemesh?
I have not.
I have.
And what do you know about it?
I don't remember in what context I heard it.
Okay, so anyone who knows about Beit Shemesh, who hasn't lived here, will say, oh, that's where all the crazy Jews are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy Jews as in like very religious?
Well, it's not that they're religious. That's not the problem. The problem is that there's an extremism where it has to be their way or the highway. And that is where the modern, expression of Shoshanna's Judaism came out, because I'm being called a shiksa in my, like the Yiddish of my grandfather. I'm being called a shiksa because I'm where they don't want me to be, or not dressed exactly as they don't want me to be. And I'm Orthodox, right? Like, this is a wig. So I cover my hair, and I usually wear a scarf or a baseball hat. So like my head is covered, I'm wearing a skirt, sleeves. And I'm being called a shiksa basically because it's a turf war. It's all about turf. And so,
well, can I insert and ask you a question that before you came on, that I wanted to ask you? Is, I'm not as religious as you, and I think one of the things that turns religion off to people is the baked in chauvinism. And so I think
baked in?
It's baked into a paternal kind of set of laws and rules for any religion. It's not like just Jews. It could be Islam. It could be Christianity.
Patriarchy.
Like, God is He, even though it's like this sexist, omnipotent being. We chose the sex. We chose He. It just seems like there's a certain set of rules to. Can you speak to that? I mean, is that true? Should we have that aversion, or is it based on our interpretation?
So I'll say like this. The Torah, right, the Bible, is objectively, no matter who you ask, even the most atheist of the atheists will tell you that the Torah has existed for over 3,000 years. So any book you're going to take that was written 3,000 years ago is going to be patriarchal. There's no getting around that society has been patriarchal. I mean, since written history at the very least. Maybe before then it was matriarchal. Who knows? Maybe the patriarchy came because the matriarchy was horrible. They finally overthrew their female overlords.
Toxic femininity.
Imagine. Yeah. Imagine, right? So, such a great theory, by the way. So the way I look at it is like this. Judaism is 98% beautiful. Beautiful. It's about treating your fellow person right. You have to leave corners of your fields unpicked for the poor. You have to donate at least 10% of your income to charity. You have to take care of your neighbors before you take care of anyone else. There are rules of a society that is gentle, that is loving, and that is compassionate. Okay, those are the main aspects of Judaism when it comes to person and person. Then there's the God parts, where it's Shabbat. Shabbat saves my life, guys. If I didn't turn off my phone once a week, I would be a lunatic, a raving. I'd be on meds. So there's Shabbat. There's the holidays, right? There's when you take a lulav and an esrog, which is the 4 species that you take during Sukkot, where we build those booths, right? It's about male and female. It's about harvesting. It's about earth and trees, and like, it's super spiritual stuff. And it connects you to the earth, and it connects you to the rhythm of the seasons and the harvests. And it's a beautiful, gorgeous thing. And Judaism is 98% this stuff. Then you have the 2% stuff that is very much an anathema to us, okay? When it comes to gender, when it comes to dynamics of a husband or a wife or things like that. So, but I'm going to explain something to you that's not gender related that may help. I don't know, maybe it will make it worse, but it should. See, people will say the Torah allows slavery. The Torah allows slavery. Okay, but when we think of slavery, what do we think of?
Like working in the fields, not making money, no food, no water, no humanity.
Being beaten, whipped. Yeah.
Right.
Raped, dehumanized.
So that is the slavery that we are familiar with, because that is the slavery that existed in the world forever. And that is the slavery that was brought over to America. The slavery in the Bible is actually servitude. And what it is very different. So for example, let's say I steal something. I steal money and I can't pay it back. Or I steal someone's animals, which is their profit at the time, and I can't pay it back. Or my father is so destitute that he doesn't want me to die, because people died of hunger regularly. We have to remember the world that was going on back then, right? And so you go to work for someone in exchange for room, board, food, and you also got Shabbat off. If there was one pillow in the house, the servant got the pillow. There were servant rights. You couldn't rape someone. You couldn't beat them. This was, if you beat a slave, they went free. So the problem a lot of times is our 21st century perspective on words that are, I will never forget this. Somebody said to me, why he was explaining to me why he's not giving his son a bris. I go, not that it's my business, but okay. He goes, because this is also foreskin. And he opens up I can't do it because my sleeve's too tight, but he takes his elbow and he shows me the skin at the end of his elbow, goes, this is also foreskin. How do I know this isn't the foreskin the Bible's talking about? I go, do you want the answer? He said, yes. I said, because the word orla in the Bible is very specifically the part of the skin that is on the genital and not on your elbow. Like, it's like, are you seriously telling me that this is foreskin and therefore you, like, really? Like, you don't want to give your kid a bris? That's fine. But let's not pretend that you're smarter than everybody else. And like, you know something that nobody else knows. So my point here is that, yes, patriarchy is absolutely through the Bible, the oral Torah. And I will tell you something else. And this is what you're talking about before, my blog post.
Yeah, I'm going to share it real quick so we can see it. Here we go. You do quite a lot of wonderful writing for the Times of Israel. And this is one that I particularly connected with, and it's God, the original feminist. And this is all, like, as I mentioned, I didn't grow up studying the Torah or reading a lot of the texts. And I love how you pull it out of the texts in this article. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about what made you write this?
So there are, and this is the 2% that when I was talking about 98% versus 2% in the Bible, there are verses and rules in the Torah that are very, very difficult oftentimes for people with modern minds to deal with. And the two particularly that deal with women is what's called sota, which is a woman who is accused of adultery, and eshet yifat tohar, which is a beautiful woman that can be taken in wartime. So I'll just use the woman who is suspected of adultery real quick, because let's just take even modern 2025, in Iran, in Pakistan, what happens to a woman whose husband either believes that she is being adulterous or just wants to get rid of her?
She gets blamed, right?
This is where they stone them.
Yeah.
Oh, they get stoned.
Women nowadays are murdered for family honor. They are murdered for stepping out of the house without their father's or brother's permission. Okay, so remember, the Torah was given at a time when that was the norm, where men took things into their own hands and said, you walked out on me, or you're going to see this guy, or maybe he just wanted to get rid of her and didn't want to pay her divorce settlement and just accused her of it. No one's going to defend her. She dies or just gets beaten to a pulp. So in steps the Torah and says, okay, here's the story. A man thinks his wife is cheating on him. He has warned her in front of 2 witnesses. And then 2 witnesses see her locked away, meaning door locked, with a man that the guy that her husband has warned her against seeing again. Like you see all of these stipulations have to apply. If these things happen, then the man can take her to the temple and accuse her. And then the priest will come, dishevel her, like take off her head covering, and she is allowed to either say, yes, I was an adulteress, and then they get divorced, or I did not do what he's accusing me of, and she drinks water, bitter waters, where God's name is erased, the ashes are put into the dust is put into the water, she drinks it, and goes home. Okay? What happens? The man cannot touch her. The justice is given to God, and she gets a choice. Maybe she doesn't want to stay with the guy who accused her of adultery. Maybe this is her way out, and she gets out without a scratch. So if you look at it like this is what society was doing at the time to women, and then God comes in and says, no, you can't do this to your wife. You have to warn her. You have to this. And then even then, if she does all those things against your will, after you've met my conditions, you still have to take her to the priest, and it's out of your hands. Unheard of. Unheard of. And so when you look at it like that, you're thinking, oh, wait a minute. That actually sounds like we're protecting a woman from a guy who doesn't want her anymore, or who thinks that she's cheating. What is it called? A jealous rage. So it really, Judaism warrants thought. You just have to you don't have to agree with everything. I'm certainly not saying that, but you have to at least look at it where it was.
I think that's right. Contextualizing it. Like, for example, if you don't believe in faith and you want another example, our founding fathers created the document that allowed for more free people than ever in history. But at the same time, during the times that they lived, kept slaves, right? So it's contextualizing this. And I think that was a great answer. The other thing that I extracted from your answer is I'm just thinking about, so I think a lot of people who don't believe in religion think that they've just inherited these values and they don't realize where they come from. Like they're just born and they think they have these values. But for 3,000 years, our people have really aggregated this document and passed on the Torah that, is, I don't know, it's just so beneficial still. Is this the nonprofit that you created in this space? Okay, do you want to maybe explain that to us and where it fits in here?
So I grew up loving Judaism. I grew up being a very strong, proud Jew. And then I get to this area of Beit Shemesh that is, they're doing things in the name of Torah that are not Torah. They're screaming at women. They're putting women in the back of the bus. They're not letting women get divorced. They're not letting women be elected to committees and political positions. And they're saying that it's in the name of Judaism. And that's when I got really pissed off. Because I'm like, if you want to tell me that Judaism says X and Y, you better believe that I don't know what I'm talking about. Because as someone who does know Judaism, who did study it and who does study it and who knows halacha and cares about halacha, right? I'm not coming at this saying women have to be the same as men, so whatever men are doing, women have to do. I never uttered such a thing. But if you're going to, oppress someone and abuse someone and say that that's Torah, I'm going to get mad both as a Jew and as someone who fights for justice. Forget being a female, right? It has nothing to do with it, but it's not coming because of feminism. It's coming because of justice. And so what I was seeing regularly was this abuse in the name of Torah, claiming that things were Torah when they weren't. And my aunt was being denied a divorce, and she was in New York, but he was here. And long story short, it took me 7 years to get her a divorce, which was
wow,
a dramatically difficult crisis of faith for me. Getting into the Beit Din, which is it's called the House of law, but it's a rabbinic court basically. And being in the rabbinic court and seeing that there was not justice to be had, just apathy and corruption, and just like, you are not the people who should be holding up Torah. Like, no. So then all of a sudden I had to decide, like, am I going to step away from Judaism because these guys say that they are the arbiters of the Jewish law and they're not, like, meaning they're crap? Or do I step up and say, no, I'm going to fight? Well, I think the beginning of our conversation shows that I'm not a fighter. I'm quite a fighter. So Chochmat Nashim is the organization we founded with other women. And I'll make it very brief. We basically we distinguish between Jewish law and cultural practice, and we fight against the abuse of Torah and the erasure and silencing of women in Orthodoxy.
How large of a population do you think are these people who you say should not be holding the Torah and are not the arbiter? Like, how large of a population? Because, I always like to think, like, we as Jews are such a small population. And as I learn more and more about the Jewish world and like the different pockets of it, I try to imagine how large that group of people is. Well,
listen, I'm very careful to say extremists and not ultra-Orthodox, because the ultra-Orthodox is a very large, it's about 20% of the Israeli Jewish population. Israeli Jewish population, I think. Or the Israeli population. Maybe 20% of the Israeli population as a whole, because the Arabs are also 20%, and then everybody else is 60%. But the problem is that in Israel, there's no separation between religion and state. And so the ultra-Orthodox parties don't let women on them. So you automatically have 16 seats out of 120 that are male, and not just male, but male that have to hold even if they don't believe it themselves, they have to toe that line that they're given. And that line is automatically male dominated, male preferred, right? Like, meaning it prefers males. I'm not exactly sure the right way to say that.
Break this down. 16 seats where?
In the Knesset.
In the Knesset, okay.
So, but then, so that's this is the perfect example of what, like, I'm trying to ask you is like, is there any, so they justify it through the use of the theology. Is there anything that they're referencing that's like in a minyan, you need a certain amount of man or something that's institutionalized patriarchal, and look, I'm not a liberal, like, I'm not extreme left, I'm not woke or anything, but this does seem interesting to me, at least, of like where that, like, exactly this niche that you're in, where the cultural landscape changes from the interpretation of the biblical one and using biblical justification for power in society now, through the lens of, like, men need to be in the Knesset because it says so in the Torah. And I think it's like that contradiction that people are so interested in. And you're right there at the nexus of this work, So
it's not true that in Judaism, a woman can't hold a public office. And obviously the classic example is Devorah. She was a prophetess. And then they'll say, well, she was just one prophetess. Everyone else was a prophet. And she was the exception, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but if she was the exception, and it doesn't say that in the Torah. It's not like it says, there was no worthy man, so we had to take a woman. It doesn't say that. It just says Devorah was a prophetess. And there is some people will tell you, yes, a woman can't hold public office because they will derive it from the fact that it says, you shall set a king over Israel. It says king and not queen. And therefore they just take that as any appointed anything. Listen, there are Orthodox synagogues that won't let women be president of the shul. Okay, so they will tell you, of course, we have a source, but honestly, you can find a source for anything. Like you said, everything's in contextual, but it's certainly not like you can't eat pig or you can't, kill or something like that. It doesn't say no woman shall be a something or other. Like, absolutely not. And they'll say it's not modest.
That's why your work is so important. That's why your work is so important to me. Is because you call bullshit. And I think, like, someone as more being a secular Jew who does have really strong ties to Hashem, by the way, loves hearing that because and strong women raised me, like only strong. So when I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking of the women who raised me, these strong Jewish women who helped open the Illinois Holocaust Museum when Nazis marched here, in place of where they marched, like just doing these crazy, incredible things. And as a secular Jew who finds Jewry so beautiful and the manipulation of it happening all the time, I think your work is so important.
Thank you.
And it's lovely. Yeah. It's really crystallizing for me the importance of it.
This was a big issue during the World Zionist Congress, and it's whether women could be ordained as rabbis. I know that was one of the platform issues. I mean, I was getting out the vote for the reform movement, and that was one of our concerns, is making sure women are allowed to be ordained as rabbis. I want to talk about the erasure of women. One of the things I know is especially like medical health pamphlets and other places there. And I already think just in society, women are so excluded in medical research and studies done on women. I know, for example, women have different signs and symptoms of a heart attack than men can have. So it can go undetected in women a lot of time. But what are you seeing in terms of the erasure of women in this space?
Well, the thing behind me right here is actually a poster that we put up all across Israel. I got a phone call from a woman who said, I need your help. I said, okay. She said, I need you to help me keep my friends from dying. I said, I'm not sure what you think I do, but I'm not like a medical person or a guru or anything. I didn't know where she was coming from. And then she said, no. I know what you do. You raise money for Jewish women and Jewish causes. I said, okay, close enough. I said, what's up? And she said, my neighbor died at 34 of a disease she didn't know the name of and left 3 orphans, and she didn't have to die because she didn't know that she had to get screening, or that when she had a lump or a redness, that it was a problem. And so fast forward, I helped her raise money for posters. She wrote the posters in Hebrew. They don't have Facebook wall. And no ultra-Orthodox publication talks about women's health. So where is a woman going to get health information before she's having babies? And once you have babies, it's very difficult to get a mammogram or to get tested for breast cancer, because you're either lactating or you're breastfeeding or whatever. So it's much harder. And so we put these posters together that basically just says, it starts with a Torah verse that basically says, and you will guard your souls greatly, which is interpreted to taking care of your health. That you should you should be proactive in taking care of your health. And it says 90% survival rate with early detection. Call us for more information. Doesn't say breast, doesn't say cancer, doesn't say any of those things that would be, they would be ripped down in a heartbeat. They're very modestly written. And we got 250 phone calls by men and women every year that we did it. Until then, the health clinics started picking up the slack, and they started putting out campaigns just for the ultra-Orthodox. And I will tell you that the screening, which had been lower even than Arab women's screening, went up by 10% since we did our work.
For those that don't know, I believe it's Ashkenazi Jewish women specifically with the BRCA mutation are more at risk for having breast cancer. My grandmother had a double mastectomy. I've been told to screen my whole life. So to hear that women who are already at high risk for this did not even know that they needed to be screened is really mind-blowing to me.
Right, but here again, this is where it's a cultural thing. It's a societal taboo. It is false. It is false that it is not modest to talk about your breast care. And I want to say, no one is saying to them, you can't talk about your breast health. But she told me, I don't even know the words for my body parts. They don't teach us the words for my body parts because it's considered not sanua, which means immodest. And so here you're talking about people who are taking a beautiful concept of being having humility and making it shame. And that tipping point is where I am very much trying to put a guardrail and push people back onto the path, generally speaking. So one of the things we do, by the way, I don't know if you can see behind me, is We have posters and pictures of women and girls, and we have a photo bank. It's a Jewish Life photo bank, recently renamed for Laura Ben David, who unfortunately just passed away. She was my best friend and board member. We have over 2,000 images of Jewish women, girls, and families, communities, representing in a healthy, positive way a diverse Jewish community, because we have to reverse the concept that Orthodox Jews are not human beings, that Orthodox Jews are not human in terms of their needs, their wants, their lives in the community and outside of the community. And one of those, visual representation, we was talking about it before other people was talking about it, but it is a vital, vital thing. Being visible and taking away the taboos is, I think, the most effective way to make change in perspective, perception, and in behavior.
That brings me actually to another article of yours I wanted to talk about. So let me share my screen again. Sorry, this always takes a little bit. As somebody who is not Orthodox, and obviously we knew the stories of the female hostages in Gaza, to learn about how they kept their faith while in captivity. Like, this was the first article I read like that. Yeah, like, it was not even something, you know what I mean? Like, obviously we all remember the really profound images of these girls being paraded in front of thousands of people screaming at them, the white flag, the mutilated hand. Like, these are all burned into our mind. But thinking about them still practicing their Judaism while in captivity, was not something I had ever thought about until I read this article. So do you want to talk a little bit about who is righteous, the kind, brave women who came out of Gaza? That's who.
So I think we worried, we prayed, we were terrified for the young women who were stolen out of their army base and paraded through the streets of Gaza into jeeps of trunks of jeeps and in tunnels, not knowing what had befallen them, what condition they were going to come out of those horrific tunnels in. And when these young women came out, and I remember just, watching and just being blown away at their, they walked out like this. They walked out like out of, a year and a half of being in a tunnel and starved and filthy. You don't even know. They don't even talk about the details that we hear when they speak, and just the conditions that are beyond. And they came out. Why? Because they knew the world was watching. They knew the first thing their parents would see is them walking out. And they wanted their parents to know, I'm here, I'm fine, don't worry. Even if it meant a year of post, therapies and hospitalization and recovery, they wanted their parents to see them strong and not defeated. They wanted Israel to see them strong and not defeated. And my whole concept of a heroine, of a brave person, was rewritten when I watched that happen. It was like the most magnificent miracle. I was witnessing a miracle of human strength and resilience that it was life-changing. It was life-changing to see how they came out. And in terms of their faith, Agam Berger, for example, she spoke about how Shabbat kept her. Like, she refused. That was her, what's it called? Her defiance of the terrorists. That was her defiance of the terrorists. She said, I will not wash dishes on Shabbat. I will not cook. I will not cook for you on Shabbat.
And that's how you keep your humanity, right? Like, these are my attributes and my traits, and these are things that define me as a human being, and I refuse to yield these things that make me.
It's tremendous. I don't know that I would have done that. Because I know, halachically speaking, someone is going to kill you. You cook on Shabbos. There's only 3 things you cannot do to save your life in Judaism. Only 3. And cooking on Shabbat is not one of them. So the fact that she defied them and the fact that she said no is astounding. And it just rewrote, like really rewired my brain when I think of a righteous person. And she wrote on the helicopter, everyone's given a whiteboard, and she wrote on the helicopter, she said, she started with a verse from Tehillim, Psalms, which says, I chose the path of faith. How does it go? B'derech hamunah bacharti, and the path of faith I chose. And u'b'derech hamunah chazarti, which she added, which means, and in the path of faith I returned. Which is like, I gotta get chills even just like saying it out loud. It's insane. It's insane. It's like she's writing Torah. And here she is, a 20-year-old who was abandoned. I mean, wasn't abandoned, but she should never have been there in the first place. We screwed up royally.
Something that hit me, and as a mother, like her mother, originally she was supposed to get released on the Sabbath, right? And her mother needed permission to travel to go when she was being released.
So she didn't need permission. Like there's no question, your kid's coming out of hell, you go, whatever, even if it's Yom Kippur, you go. But because she had taken on Shabbat, meaning she had chosen to keep Shabbat in honor of her daughter's survival and return, she did not want to violate the thing that she had taken on in order to get her daughter back. So she was just going to wait. I believe she was going to wait until after Shabbat to travel to the hospital or something like that. And then Agam was not taken out on Shabbat in the end. She had to wait another few days, and she came out on a Tuesday, which personally, I'm not that type of person to be like, oh, well, she didn't come out on Shabbat. I'd be like, no, she should have come out 4 days ago, but that's okay.
I feel like
people like that.
Keeping Shabbat got her through this and got her mother through this experience 100%.
100%.
I'm curious, you're living in Israel now, and we're hearing rumblings. This podcast might come out in the future, but right now, Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump are talking about this deal. Looks like this morning, I'll see it when I believe it, Hamas is capitulating. Let's say hypothetically they come through. What is the feel in Israel? Where are people towards this deal that's kind of manifesting right now?
It would be euphoric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get these babies home.
There's no one here that doesn't want to see the hostages come home. The only dissension that you have is people who feel that if we don't finish Hamas, but like, honestly, you're never going to finish the last
How do you
Hamas.
finish an ideology? Yeah. It's, you perpetuate it maybe. The only other time I could see people that were blowing themselves up would be Japan. And we dealt with it the other way, where we did level it. And there was an ideological change. So people who say that like a brute force can't are also being naive. It can. in one generation, we went from kamikazes to buying their cars. So I really don't know.
Well, you need to change education. They're raised that the Jew stole your land. You cannot live until the Jew is dead. So that has to change. If that doesn't change, they will never stop blowing themselves up. So it's really education. And UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which perpetuates the refugee status of every Palestinian and their descendant, is a major, if not the major reason that an entire generation of Palestinians in Gaza is now suffering terribly, because they were raised that they are the ultimate victim and the Jew has taken everything from them and they have no life until the Jew is gone. So changing that education, God willing, will make change.
I know, but I'm like in America, and it's like ubiquitous. It's not even the Palestinians; it's the propaganda that permeates everywhere. There's only 15 million Jews. It's really hard to get our narrative out there. Actually, one of the things I always joke, like, we're white blood cells. We just attack anti-Semitism however it like manifests. And one of the things that we really have to do a lot is infuse the Jewish narrative. Like, there will be something that happens and they will be first to get a narrative out there, and we need to like infuse ours. So, and it just seems like that is like the number one thing, is like that the facts are wrong to begin with. So it's like you're going to lose this argument just joining it, and it's like the proverbial boogeyman Go ahead, Simona. Sorry.
We have to go show up at a school today for at a school board meeting for this kind of stuff. We have to explain why this kind of ideology in the classroom is extremely dangerous, and why educators that are trying to push a oppressor versus oppressed, very binary narrative of the situation, why this is a very dangerous thing to be doing in schools here.
Or even like DEI, it really is a mask for that ideology, right? So it's these propagandic, like you can't say you're against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, we might be against equity actually, but they use these terminologies that kind of gaslight you into being like, well, why aren't you for this? And you're like, well, because it's not diverse, equitable, or, you're literally just rearranging prejudice. Yeah. So
100%.
it just becomes really hard for a lot of people, whether you're in the Palestine or in Chicago, to really get the right messaging, I feel like. And that's where we lack.
There's no question, and social media is a tool, and they have overtaken that tool. There's no question. I think that as Jews, the most important thing for us to do is to educate our children and our fellow Jews as to our story. Nothing makes me more furious than hearing Peter Baynard or other as a Jews say, well, I was lied to when I went to camp, and, Israel didn't just fall. Like, oh, come on. Like, whatever, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, no, but I am with you there.
I was going to say about this deal. I mean, we're coming up on Simchat Torah, and I know what a joy it would be. I mean, 2 years, so many faces that we'll never forget, gone forever. So much. I know I've never experienced pain of this level, for living in this for the last 2 years. What a joy it would be for Simchat Torah, for this to have.
It would be a bracha of epic proportions, and I think the entire Jewish nation would be just in euphoria. It would be euphoric for us to have them home at the 2-year mark, and for have Simchat Torah turned into a chag once again. That would be lovely. And I feel like it really does dovetail into what, you were saying before, Daniel, about how, like, this is our Judaism and we can't allow other people to hijack it. That's really, my first blog post was the hijacking of Judaism, its victims and consequences, because I really believe that Judaism is being hijacked by extremists, and those of us who love it, first of all, we're all equal stakeholders. There is no one who owns more Judaism than another Jew. Like, we are all equal stakeholders. So first of all, that is one message for your listeners. If you're a Jew, you're an equal stakeholder. That's first of all. You come to the meetings. And second of all, Judaism it's a religion of love. It is a religion of love. Everything else is commentary. And so what I do and what I focus on is making sure the community is healthy, that people feel welcome, that they are safe to be seen, safe to be heard, safe to get a divorce if you need it, safe to talk about abuse if you have to, God forbid, and safe to be who you are. And so without being too woke, as you mentioned before, it is vital that everyone feel comfortable, because Judaism is a relationship with God. It's a relationship with God, whatever that means to you. And so for me, it's very important that the community know there's a space, even within Orthodoxy. You guys can come on over to Chochmat Hashem. In Orthodoxy, you have a place, you have a space, you can be safe. We will, help you with it, whatever it is that we can help you, or find you someone who can help you. Don't turn away from God if someone turns you away from Orthodoxy.
Shoshanna, how do people reach you if they need?
Well, I'm on Instagram. And you can go to my website. Actually, I have a few websites. skjaskoll@gmail.com might be. No. Yes. skjaskoll@gmail.com. That's my email. And skjaskoll.com is my website. And then Chochmat Hashem is a website. But I'm on Instagram and I'm on X. I'm on X. You find me all the time on X.
Shoshanna, I want to say, as one of those stakeholders, I really, really appreciate the work you're doing. And it's validating for us when we meet other Jews that are like out there on the front lines doing stuff, because we think we're just like Meshuggahs here in Chicago, but we're all Meshuggahs
in Chicago, and we love you for it. Thank you for what you do.
And it's just so reciprocal. And I think the nuance to where you are is so important for our community. You know, a lot of, like Simona started this conversation, we're meeting a lot of advocacy people on the front lines post October 7th, but we got to make sure we don't neglect our own community and take care of ourselves.
That's
and
right.
that's what
Absolutely.
you're doing. So
Amen.
thank you so much.
Got to get your own house in order before you can, help get other houses in order. You're just so endearing. Like, to know you is just a pleasure. We've really enjoyed having you on today.
That's very sweet. Thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to hearing, to watching, to sharing.
That's all for this episode of Jew and Stew. Our thanks for Shoshanna Keats Jaskoll for joining us, a writer, philanthropic, and unflinching advocate whose work reminds us that one voice, when it refuses to bend, can change the air around it. If this conversation challenged you, inspired you, or gave you something worth turning over in your mind, that's the point. Share it, subscribe, pass it on, because the strength of our people has always been carried by those who are willing to speak it. Thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, I'm Daniel Schwartz with Simona Begode. This is Jew and Stew. Follow the Chicago Jewish Alliance to stay in the loop and subscribe to this podcast so you can see what's coming next. We're going to have speakers that represent the entire spectrum of the Jewish community, from philosophical thinkers, from soldiers, people on the front lines of advocacy work on universities. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.